In the pentagram rite, I saw before me an odd green shape that was taller than it was wide, and there were bits of yellow in it. With the first set of vibrations, I saw the shadows turn teal. Then a thick darkness obscured from the north, beyond the altars, and a little in this direction, like about there. Then in the east to about there. The shadows got sharper, and there was a very distinct contrast in the brightness outside the shadows and the darkness in the shadows. Then I began to feel the moving over me. And there was a pattern, like little green strings overlapping, forming some sort of fabric. But it wasn't really a fabric in terms of clothing. It did have some dimension to it beyond just being a flat surface. In the final reading, the flow around me became sort of visible with rainbow colors. In the final scrying, I saw oddly combined neon bright and dark all about. And I still feel that throbbing pleasantness afterwards. The third chapter reminds us that some of the ideas regarding redheads relates to the color attributed to the bottom chakra, to stuff about blood, although we must say that the view of Muslimin as part of their faith, considering the blood unclean, is not accurate. It's, a keep away from, so you clean it up. If it's menstrual blood, again, it's not considered najis, it's janub. So there's the distinction drawn there that most cultures don't have between unclean and, well, it's a risk either for the person or for other people. So now, I don't remember exactly where in tonight's reading it was, but the saying that clowns aren't sexy, it's like maybe not because they're clowns, but let's be real, all the makeup and stuff that most women do, it's kind of of that category. And when it is, it's like, just like a clown, you associate the mess with that, or the adornment in that sexual context, and that is why, that is what's thought of that. Or another thing that's not true, that menstruating women don't stink. It's like, how can you say that? It's like, maybe it can be covered up, maybe there can be more cleaning up, but honestly, people still notice the smell of blood, and no amount of perfume is going to hide that from everybody. And then there's going to be just the obnoxiousness of all that perfume. But deep down, we kind of, can sense those things, or enough people can. And again, there's the reminder of how the blood and the setting apart of women may, produce some things. Now, something I don't entirely remember what chapter it is in, other than it's from tonight's reading, is the idea that what direction you point the pentagram is, whether evil or good. And some people don't have that association. So that's, good to point out that some people don't think like that. But the idea of a witch is just some pre-Christian pagan religion. It's like the pre-Christians and the cultures to the sides of the Christians distinguished between witches and the other people. It wasn't a designation whether a person was monotheist or polytheist or what gender of entity they were worshiping. That's not what a witch is. And so there's this narrative, per se, about this retreat that overlaps with this. And there's some significant signs that this person is Jewish, not just the replacement in the recipes of the ham, and the mention of them, Jewish magazines and stuff like that. The witch thing and the redhead thing taking the place of the criticism of the Jews at a particular period, particularly after Vladimir the Great broke up the Khazaria kingdom, and they ended up, the Ashkenazi and the Sephardic ended up spreading from that region, and a bunch of other types of Jews, although there's a couple minute types of Jews that were in some areas before the Khazarian kingdom, which had Jews ruling it. But as I'm saying, maybe I can't quite articulate it, but yeah, certain things replaced some of the ideas. For the Jews, of course, it was the money lenders and the interest that was of the bigger concern to people than anything else. Thus far, we are not getting into the scientific ideas of the function of the red hair, but indicating where some of it originated. And, when you have one culture conquering another, or one culture is flourishing as immigrants and people are feeling threatened, when it's not really the immigrants that are doing that, it's the elite that are pushing things from multiple directions. Certainly, like the Irish potato famine and stuff was, there was some fault to be laid on other than the Irish. There's some mention of how people wanted to get rid of red hair or freckles or other such features, particularly when some superstitions were laid and certain prohibitions were put down. But, the actual science of certain traits being the thing that, they're going to be mischievous and all that stuff. It's like, I think people of any gender or color or whatever are capable of doing right or wrong with what they got. When writing a story, certainly if you have one character with red hair, Blondes also face prejudice too. It draws out that attention. And, at one point, redheads was at the top of porn searches, apparently. Well, I think everybody having computers kind of would have changed what they were looking for. You know what I mean? It's like you had people that weren't looking for on the computer, and then everybody's looking on the computer, so things more resembling society. I don't know if I mentioned about the previous session, but there was the talk about how people will think that the Irish, Scottish are more attractive as far as the redheads are concerned. And again, so much stuff is subjective. I do think whether you know these origins or not, it's like, okay, this person has red hair, so we're going to make him different somehow. And, that's just not necessarily true that they're different, much less that they stick out. One of the things we also need to look at is that when it comes to redness in hair, well, that's going to be a lot more common when it comes to certain other features. Like, doesn't it come from, right over there? And, there's where we're more familiar from it spreading from. It also is, a bit in there. And yeah, these were cultures that people may not have had the best of associations with. Of course, it's odd that some of the strongest prejudices and rules regarding these things come from the very areas where they're most common. I guess redheads were a minority.